Hi there, it's Tracy Kiernan from Step by Step Painting, and this acrylic painting tutorial is going to show you how to paint a Tuscan landscape with acrylics on an 11 by 14 inch canvas. So I am going to talk about brushes and colors first. You will need 3 different brushes for this. So we'll be using a 3/4 inch flat wash brush, a number 12 bright brush, and a number 4 round brush. You'll need a palette to mix your colors on. I like to use disposable paper plates. There's a lot of color mixing in this tutorial. And there are 7 colors in this painting. So we'll be needing Mars Black, Hooker's Green Hue Permanent, Dioxazine Purple, Naples Yellow, Titanium White, Red Oxide, and light blue permanent. If you don't have these exact colors, you can use whatever brand or whatever similar color to it. We'll also be needing a pencil. We'll be drawing the landscape. We will not be using a tracer for this one. I'm going to start, because this is a landscape painting, I like to start by dividing my canvas up, and the first step I usually do is define where my horizon line will be. This canvas is placed in a vertical format, and my horizon line is about 5 inches from the top of the canvas. So I made little marks, about 3 marks, and then I'm just going to take my ruler and do a horizontal line. This does not have to be a perfect perpendicular line, parallel line to the top and bottom of the canvas. It just needs to be kind of 5 inches draw line. And then we're going to loosely draw a mountain. So above our horizon line, we have these tall mountains way in the distance. I have 3 sort of main mountains. These are going to be the kind of bluish purple mountains that are way in the distance. Then I'm going to break my landscape up further by drawing hills. I'm going to take this hill, and it's going to start above my horizon line, about an inch above my horizon line. I'm going to take this, and it's going to swoop down to the right. So we have this large sort of hill formation, and another one on the right of that, kind of a flat hill that goes a little bit above the horizon line. And then I'm going to draw my road. There's a windy sort of road that's going up the hills. I'm going to take, this is the right side of the road, and it's going to start where that horizon line is, and it's going to curve down and curve to the right, and here's the left side of the road. The road is wide at the bottom and narrow in the distance. That's how we can create some perspective in this painting. So taking this road, it's turning, and it's kind of meeting that other line and getting narrow. So it needs to be narrow in the distance and wide at the bottom. And then about here in the middle of the landscape, I'm going to divide this hill. So this is that front bottom hill, and behind it is some vineyards, kind of, we'll see the different rows of greenery behind it, so that's dividing up close and far away. So there's a hill right here, and then there's a hill on the left. I drew another curved line, and that's going to divide it. It's going to make a hill that's closer and a hill that's further away. This line over here, I actually made it a little bit straighter and above that bottom hill, and I erased that line right there. So we have this loose sort of drawing of our landscape, and we're just going to start filling this in with color, and I will guide you through step by step. We're going to start at the sky, and we're going to work our way down, filling each sort of segment with different kind of colors to really form and define this Tuscan landscape painting. So let's start with the sky. I'll be using a 3/4 flat wash brush, and you'll need to load your palette with light blue permanent, titanium white, and light blue violet. That light blue violet will be used in the mountains. It will not be used for the sky. So right now we just need the light blue permanent and the titanium white. So take your 3/4 flat, dip it in the water, and kind of tap it dry. And we want to mix the blue and white on our palette. So I'm going to grab this blue and little bit of that white, kind of mix it, but I like to not mix the colors right away. I'm going to start at the top. I'm going to do these expressive, loose, angled strokes. For this sky, we want it to be slightly darker at the top, and we want to blend some more white towards the bottom. So the bottom of the sky is really behind or above the mountain. So that's as far as our sky is going down. So when you get to, like when you're approaching the peaks of the mountains, the edges of the mountain lines, you want to load your brush in the white, and you want to kind of blend that white above the mountain and blend that up into the sky. You want to use the full width of your paintbrush and angled strokes as I'm painting with these different angles. And I'm letting that kind of blend on the canvas. And you see how the sky is a little bit darker at the top and it blends to this pretty light blue at the bottom. That's going to make your sky look like there's some high clouds, and it also gives it a little bit of perspective when you do light colors towards the bottom of your sky. Let's mix our first mountain color. So don't rinse your brush. Whatever's on your brush, grab your light blue violet, and you're going to mix your light blue with your light blue violet and a little bit of white on your palette. So again, this is light blue violet, and I'm mixing in little bits of white and little bits of light blue. We're going to take this, and I'm going to do the mountain peak on the left. This is the furthest away mountain in the painting. And notice how it's a very similar color to the sky. That's going to create the illusion that this mountain is very far away. It's almost the same color as of the sky. I'm just going to paint it solid. And then what I like to do when I do mountains is I like to take white, and I like to take white and blend it on the bottom and then blend it up, just like what we did with the sky. This creates perspective in your mountains by making the bottom part of the mountain lighter and the top part darker. It gives it kind of illusion there's this like mist on the bottom of the mountain, or it's just kind of lighter towards the bottom. So I'm going to do the same thing over here, but I want this mountain to stand out from the other one. So I'm loading my brush. I painted this with more light blue violet, so it's more of that light blue violet color and has less of that other blue color. And it's a little bit darker than that one in the distance. So I'm using the tip of the brush to paint the edge of that mountain first. I'll take this white and kind of use this white to kind of drag this color down. Again, we're doing very loose paint strokes. We don't need to blend our colors all the way, and we don't need to render this realistic. Think oil painting, thick, impressionistic brush strokes. And then we're just dragging this down. I'm doing that thing where I'm adding that lighter color towards the bottom of the mountain. That's going to help create a bit of perspective in our mountain. And we're taking this color and we're bringing this all the way down to this road that kind of disappears off into the distance. If we accidentally paint some of this purple mountain color over where we need to do green hills, that's okay. We can always paint over where we need the green to be. I'm just going to take that, divide up those two mountain peaks a little bit, but I'm not going to render this any further. I'm going to keep it simple. It's way in the distance. It does not need to be rendered any further. I'm going to take a little bit of this white and kind of swoop this down at the bottom. Just want to make sure it's very, very light at the bottom of that hill. Let's rinse and let's introduce our green to our palette so that we can start painting some of these green hills. And make sure I get all that blue rinsed off the 3/4 flat. And I'm going to load my palette with Hooker's Green Hue Permanent. So we'll be able to use this green as the base green for all the different greens in this painting. And we're going to mix a bluish green color. So I'm going to mix equal amounts of green, white, and light blue together. It's going to create this bluish kind of spring green color. It needs to be relatively light because this is going to be a hill that's kind of in the distance, and we need light colors to be way back here. I'm going to take this, and this is that sort of flat hill that we drew earlier, and all this back here is green. I'm doing very loose, kind of long horizontal strokes. I'm going to grab some white. I'm going to make this lighter on the bottom of this hill. Blend that with the rest of the landscape. I am having this green overlap this line over here, that pencil line that I drew. That's going to be kind of a light yellowish base in that area, but that's okay. I can paint over where that needs to be. So the other part that is green is over here on the left. There's this curved hill that's on the left of our road, and this is also further in the distance. It's the same green. I'm using the tip of the brush to define that, but I'm making my paint strokes curve in the direction of that hill. And then we're gonna add a little bit more, just darker green, the Hooker's Green Hue, not mixed with anything. Added some more of that to my brush so that the bottom of this hill can be slightly darker and then it's slightly lighter at the top. And the top of that hill goes just a slither above the horizon line, and we should still be able to see our road in between those two green areas. We are going to introduce Naples Yellow to our palette, and that is going to be the base color for all the land that you see that has that kind of yellowish beige color on the ground. And so this is Naples Yellow. We want to rinse all that green off of our brush, and we are going to start filling in the parts of the landscape that have that color for the base color. So let's load the tip of our brush. We're still using the 3/4 flat brush. Let's just load it in yellow with nothing else. And we have this area over here. This is going to have some rows of grapevines or something that's growing in rows here. Likely they're grapevines. And we're going to make that pure yellow towards the right. So this is, look at the angle that these brush strokes are going in. They're going in a diagonal direction. And at the very bottom of that is white. And I blended that white up into the dark. So light on the bottom, dark at the top. We have a closer hill on below that, and we're going to use the same colors, but we're going to change the direction of our paint stroke, and that is going to get that to stand out and make it look like those grapevines are going in a different direction. So I'm going to make this stand out a little bit more, I'm going to start with lighter yellow. So I'm mixing Naples Yellow with white, and I'm making it lighter at the top. My paint strokes are going in a curved direction this time. And as I get to the bottom, I'm going to start blending in the Naples Yellow so that it's darker at the bottom and light at the top. When we go and paint our greenery, our rows, those rows are going to be going in that curved direction. A little bit more white over here at the top. I'm going to add a kind of a second coat of paint right here to kind of cover that pencil line so that we don't see our pencil line anymore. So then we have another area with the Naples Yellow as a base, and that's over here on the left. These are going to be rows of lavender, and I'm going to use the same color, same kind of concept, but I'm going to actually mix a teeny tiny bit of green into the Naples Yellow. Not a lot. You don't want it to turn a green base. Still want it to be a yellow base, but using that teeny bit of green in there is going to make this area of our landscape look a little bit different from the other areas of the landscape. But we're going to do the same thing where it's dark at the top, or actually light at the top and dark at the bottom. So I'm going to add a little bit more dark towards the bottom. And when we load little bits of green in there, just teeny tiny bits on the brush, and it should blend in with that yellow and not turn the whole thing green. And then at the top, a little bit more white at the top so that it's lighter at the top. And we had to go over the road, and that's okay. We will paint over this road to get that defined. I am next loading red oxide onto my palette, and this is going to be the color we'll be using in the path. and I'm going to load the tip of the brush in the red oxide. I did not rinse my brush for this. If your brush is overloaded with too much yellow, I would rinse it, but we'll be mixing yellow into this anyway, so I didn't rinse it. So start with just the red oxide and start at the bottom of the road and do horizontal strokes. I'm actually going to switch gears here and define this road. This is helpful for filling it in. So I'm using the red oxide in the tip of the brush, and I'm looking at my pencil lines that I drew earlier. They're still kind of showing through that first layer of paint, and I am drawing the edges of the road so that I know where to go when I'm filling this in. So this road needs to be dark at the bottom, and it gradually gets lighter in the distance. And in order to make that red oxide lighter, we'll be using the yellow oxide and titanium white. So we're going to do loose left and right strokes using mostly just the tip of the brush and filling in our row using the brush. I'm holding the brush horizontally, doing short little horizontal strokes. I'm letting that road have more red oxide at the bottom, but as I approach the middle, I'm blending in that yellow, that Naples yellow color. So Naples yellow in the center. If you find that this big 3/4 flat brush is kind of too big for this road, especially when we get to the back part, you can always switch to a smaller brush if that's easier for you. When we get to part of the road that's kind of further in the distance, we're going to start blending in titanium white. So you don't need to rinse your brush when you grab your white. Let that white gradually blend in with the road. We're going to take that white. The road just kind of disappears to the left. And little horizontal strokes to fill this in. Our road is light in the distance. Don't worry that our road line that we drew with the tip of the brush is dark. That's okay. In fact, I'm taking some of that dark and letting that kind of drag in with the rest of that white. But for the most part, it needs to be light in the distance, dark at the bottom. Take this, drag it in. We will paint more of the edging of this road after we paint in the details of the landscape. So don't worry too much about the edging of the road, but try not to go outside the lines of the road at this point. I am going to, before this dries, I am going to paint a little bit of texturing on the road. I'm going to grab titanium white on the tip of the brush without rinsing it. So I'm going to take this white and do very sort of short horizontal lines, thick strokes down here, and that's going to blend with that color. And take maybe some of that yellow, do a few thick sort of horizontal loose lines. Again, we want to think loose. We're not rendering this road realistic. These lines are kind of thinner and more dense further in the distance. And next we will paint our building. So let's rinse our 3/4 flat and set it to the side, and we will need some fresh titanium white on our palette, and we'll need a pencil. So I am going to draw two basic house shapes, and these buildings are nestled about up here above, just above this, the yellowish part of the landscape under this green area. So I'm going to do two vertical lines, so they are positioned right here. The base of these structures are going to have greenery kind of covering the base, so we don't really see the bottom of the front part. So I did two vertical lines, diagonal lines, and horizontal lines. So this is the side of the top of the roof. Two horizontal lines, so very, very basic. I'm gonna draw this down, and there's another building in front of it. This one has a trapezoid shape roof, and it's a little trapezoid shape. It's slightly overlapping the little house behind it. And then two more vertical lines, and also we don't really see the bottom of this, but I'm going to draw the bottom line anyway. And this one we only see the front of the house, not the side of it. So very, very basic drawing, and we are going to fill these in. We don't need to be super detailed about this. Think very loose, kind of oil painting style, where we're not really going into precise detail. And plus they're kind of far away anyway. So I'm going to use my number 12 bright brush and start with titanium white. And I'm just going to use this brush to start filling in the front part of the house. So I can use the tip of the brush to kind of outline the edges and then use the full width of the brush to kind of fill it in with vertical paint strokes. So if you find that this brush is kind of too big, you can switch to a smaller brush for this. You don't have to use the exact brush that I'm using for each of these steps. If you feel more comfortable with a different brush, that's fine. So when we paint the side of the house, I'm going to change the direction of the paint strokes. So the paint strokes on the side are going to be going left and right like this. So the white is actually the first layer of color on this. We will add a teeny bit of black to this to kind of darken the side of the house to make it look a little bit more shadowy on that side. And I'll add a little bit of the Naples Yellow to the front part of the house to give it more of an off-white color. But for now, just make sure this is all filled in. And I'm going to grab my yellow, the Naples Yellow, kind of spread it on the palette a little bit so it's yellow and white mixed together. I'm going to go back and add that to the front part of this house so it gives it more of an off-white color. And then I'm going to load some Mars Black onto my palette so we can use this black to kind of make more of a gray color. You only need a tiny amount, so teeny tiny amount of black. Mix it with the white, and there's still yellow on my brush too. I'm going to take that, just the full width of the brush, and drag it left to right, and that creates that little shadow on the side of the house. The roof is the red oxide color. So without rinsing the brush, I loaded the red oxide on the tip of my brush, and I'm using the tip of the brush to outline the edge of the roof. So just basically outlining that shape that I drew with pencil. And when you outline, then you can use the full width of the brush to drag it down at an angle to fill that shape in. We can add highlights and shadowing to our roof. So grabbing titanium white on the top, I'm going to just drag it down. You only need a tiny bit of white for this. So just at the top and drag it down. Gives that little bit of color variation. And then on this left angle, I did a tiny simple white line. Again, we're not rendering this any further. We're just kind of keeping it simple. And then we can start painting this house over here. So without rinsing the brush, I decided to just let this red oxide and white become the color of this front of the house. So it's kind of a very, very light red oxide color. If you need to rinse your brush, by all means, you can rinse your brush if it's overloaded with color at this point. But I'm doing white with a little bit of red oxide for this. Full width of the brush on the front part of the house, going in a vertical direction. And then use the tip of the brush to outline the edges, get those edges more defined, and then the red oxide for the top of the house. So using the tip of the brush to outline the shape of the trapezoid. Outline the shape of the trapezoid and then fill it in solid. So for the direction of the strokes in here, we can just kind of use the full width of the brush, go at the angle depending on the part of the shape that you're filling in. So I wiped off my brush and I'm going to do some shadowing on the roof of the house on the right. So loading my brush in the black, I'm going to outline the edge of the left part of this angle, kind of dragging in a little bit, and then outline the bottom part. And then I'm going to add a little bit of shadowing on the left part of the front part of this house. So taking the black, it's important to note that there's only a tiny bit of black on my brush. And in fact, if it seems like there's too much, you may have to wipe off the brush and add a little bit more, or a little less. And then on the right side, I'm going to drag a little bit of this white. Let that kind of blend with the rest. But again, we're not going into super realistic details with these buildings. I'm going to rinse. I want this to dry just a little bit before I add the windows and door because I don't want the color from the brush to mush with that layer of color. So while that's drying, I'm going to add the cypress trees that are on the right side of these buildings. So on my palette, I'm mixing the green. I'm grabbing a big chunk of the yellow oxide that's going to warm the green up a little bit, and then adding a little bit of black. You don't want to add too much black to where it just turns like black paint. You want it to be a very, very dark green color. So the first layer of these trees is dark, and we'll layer on lighter colors for the highlights. So taking this number 4 round brush, I'm just going to paint these little kind of curved lines that kind of weave up into a point. So it's a little bit thicker at the bottom, thinner at the top. Kind of makes a kind of triangular but very, very narrow columns, kind of wiggling my brush at the top to make these cute little cypress trees that are way in the distance next to our buildings. And I'm making a row of 3, so large, medium, and small, but you can kind of change the order of that if you want that to be like small first and then large second, or however you want to do it. But we don't see the bottom of these. There's like a layer of shrubbery on the bottom that's going to cover the base of the buildings and these trees. So I'm not going to paint the trunks or anything like that. For now, they're going to look like they're floating. So now that the buildings have dried a little bit, if they're too wet, you don't want to do this step, but they're kind of dry. And I'm going to do the layer of highlighting over on the roof with the white. And I'm also going to do the doors too, but this is just titanium white on the brush and on the right side of the roof, just outlined at the edge and just kind of dragging that down very lightly. Not really opaque, I'm just kind of applying this very, very lightly. And then at the top, a little bit of light outline at the top. And then, without rinsing the brush, grabbing a little bit of black, outline this right part and this bottom part. That helps that to stand out a little bit better. And right here, outlining this bottom part to help to kind of define the shape a little bit better. And we can do doors. So we can have fun with the color of the door. It doesn't have to be pure black. We can use the red oxide, but it still needs to be dark. So I have red oxide and black on my brush. And we can do our doors and windows so that we can do just a standard little rectangle over here on the left. I'm very loosely painting these shapes. They're not perfect shapes. They're very kind of done in like 1 or 2 strokes. And then little tiny square, fill it in for the windows. You don't have to make it so your windows are lined up perfectly. And then we can do our windows on the side. So just kind of painting the outline of the little square or rectangle, but it does not need to be perfect. See how like the bottom part of the windows is not even defined, and that's okay. And we can do the little door on this. Added a little bit more red oxide in there. The little rectangle, and then you can do your two windows. Next, I'm going to paint the greenery that's on the base of these homes and little trees. So I'm going to mix, without rinsing the brush, are the same color we used in the cypress trees. I'm going to add just a teeny bit more black. I want this to start out dark, really dark at first, but not black, so like a super dark green. And then I'm going to layer lighter green colors on top of it. So I'm just taking my Foreground brush and just dabbing it, like stippling it, but kind of doing almost little rounded strokes. So there's this land that's slanted right here because of this hill and this greenery. I'm going to add a little bit more white to it as I go. So the little white color, the white kind of lightens the color at the top. And it gets kind of larger over here on the right, but this greenery covers the base of the buildings and the trees, and kind of takes care of that little gap that we had between that hill and those buildings and trees in the distance. So you dark first, and then you layer on lighter color on top of it, and that gives that depth. I'm going to do the first set of rows on this hill that's back here just under the houses. And if it helps you to draw out your lines first, you can. I'm going to do it without drawing my lines out. I'm just going to kind of visualize it as I go. I'm going to take the dark green, so we're doing dark first again, still using the number 4 round brush. I'm going to start right in the middle over here, and I'm just going to do the same kind of dotted, stippling, kind of rounded strokes, and our line, little diagonal area of grapevines that we're painting, it's thinner in the distance and it gets kind of wider as it gets closer. So that one went all the way to the bottom kind of corner of that hill, and then this one, we're going to do the same thing, but leave a gap between, and my direction of the line is shifting at this point. It's starting to veer more towards the right. Take this one's going to go a little bit more diagonally to the right, and look at how much space is between the bottom part. When it starts, it's kind of closer together, so it starts out close and then it gets kind of far away. So that's going to create this illusion of depth in your little rows of grapevines. Over on the left, same thing, but we are changing direction here. So the direction of the diagonal is starting to veer more towards the left, but it's the same concept. And also want to point out that this right here starts to get really, really far away. So you want to add more white into your color to make it look like it's further away, and also make those pieces, those rows, much, much closer together, and it gets very kind of abstract as it goes in the distance. So it just kind of fades away. And then, so that's our first layer, our dark layer. Let's go back with white without rinsing the brush. Add a little bit of white to your brush. Do the same thing and add your little white, bit of white on the top, on the left side of each of your rows, or kind of in the middle of it. You can kind of vary that a little bit, but we want that dark layer to still show through, and we wanted that little bit of light layer at the top that gives your grapevine rows more dimension. I'm going to kind of add to this greenery over here, kind of change some of the heights of these with that kind of lighter green color. Next, I'm going to do our larger up close grapevine rose on the bottom. And for that, I'm going to switch to the 12 bright brush so that I can create bigger paint strokes here. Because this is closer, this is going to be larger, but it's the same exact technique, same colors. So we're going to start with our dark green. I'm going to take Hooker's Green Hue, add a little bit of black into it, and add a little bit of yellow into it to kind of warm that green up a bit. And a little bit of black. It should be dark, but not black. So this is the 12 bright brush, and these rows are going in a different direction here. So these are going curved. I'm going to start in the back, and I'm just going to stamp my brush. So I'm just dabbing the tip of the brush, making rows, and these are all going in a curved direction. Each row is going to start gradually getting bigger as we work our way to the bottom and a little bit further apart, although it's going to get kind of a little bit messy towards the bottom, but that's okay. So see how that's kind of gradually bigger, and now it's a little bit further apart. This one too, bigger. So you're really just stamping your brush to create those rows. And then before it dries, let's grab our titanium white on the brush and kind of mix it on our palette a little bit. And this should be a light sort of olive green color. And we're going to do the same thing, but only add this light green color at the top of each of these rows, but we want to leave that dark color on the bottom. So this is blending with that color that's on the canvas. The dark green is not dry yet. And I'm just stamping the brush, big sort of impressionistic paint strokes. We're not making this look realistic. We're not going to go and paint all the little grapes on the vines or anything like that. Just very, very simplistic. I'm going to take a little bit more yellow and white and do a third layer on here, although third layer, just a little tiny bit of brighter color at the top, not as much as I did from the second layer. So then I'm going to rinse my brush, and I'm going to go back on the bottom of these with some Mars Black. So rinse the 12 bright brush and load the tip of the brush into just black paint. And I'm just going to stamp a very small lined area at the base of each of these to give that some shadow and darkness right at the bottom. Next, I'm going to introduce our purple to our palette. We're going to paint rows of lavender over on the left side, and this is Dioxazine Purple. I'm going to rinse my 12 bright brush off. So Dioxazine Purple is already a really dark color, but I'm going to add a teeny bit of black to this so my first layer can be very, very dark. So we don't want this to be black, but we want it to be like a very, very dark purple, like as dark as you can get it before it's looking too dark. So I'm going to do the same thing, only there's a slight difference with these kind of rows. I'm going to just stamp it first. Same kind of technique, but taking the full width of the brush and kind of dragging it up a little bit to create that little pieces of lavender kind of sticking up. But we're not going to go in and paint each individual lavender piece. We're keeping this very loose. So stamping your roll, but also just kind of dragging that brush upwards into like these angled strokes. So just dragging it upwards. But the same thing, the rows in the back are smaller, thinner, the ones that are kind of closer to the bottom, bigger, thicker rows and kind of more further apart. And then add your titanium white to your purple so that it creates a lighter purple. And go back and do your light color on top. A little bit more white to my brush there so it shows up better. But this will lighten your purple, but keep that dark right there at the bottom still kind of showing. Dragging that brush, see how you just drag it into these like different angles. Dragging it upwards. Then I'm going to add just a little bit more white to the tip of the brush and go back and do a little thinner kind of angled lines using the side of the tip of the brush. That's going to add more lightness, but kind of thinner strokes, but still keeping it very, very not realistic. There's more space down here on the left for some more purple. So I'm just adding some more purple in there. Go back with my white. Maybe this is overlapping the road, maybe not. So then I'm going to do 2 more cypress trays that are on the left side, just above the lavender field. And let's do the same thing, mix our very, very dark green color with our green. You can do a little bit of yellow in that and black. You want the first layer to start out dark. And we're just going to take the tip of the brush. This is the 12 bright brush, and I'm just loosely painting the shape of this tree. It starts out kind of wide and kind of rounded at the bottom, and I'm just creating the shape just by using the tip of the brush, kind of weaving the shape of that. And it gets thinner as it goes to the top, kind of goes to a point. So that's the first layer. This layer actually turned out kind of thin because there's a little bit more water on my brush. I'm going to go back with black over here. So I loaded a little bit of black on my brush, and on the left side of the trees, I'm adding little kind of loose black strokes just on the left side. That's going to create shadow in the tree. You can add your highlights now, or you can add them later. I'm going to add mine later because the trees are very wet right now. But I am going to go back and do the border of my road. So I'm going to rinse my brush, and I have red oxide with a little bit of black. So this is kind of dark red oxide to get kind of a dark muddy color. So I'm just stamping the edge of this road. So this is thicker at the bottom, but you need to allow it to get lighter and thinner as it goes in the distance. So we can use our yellow oxide to get that color to be lighter, and then we can use our titanium white to get it much lighter as it goes and turns off to the left up here. So thinner, really just kind of defining this, and it allows us to paint over any of the like lavender or grapevine colors that went over my road. I need my road to kind of be the front part of that. Then I'm going to go back and do my highlighting on those big cypress trees. So let's get some of this light green color on our brush. So green and white. You can even do a little bit of yellow in it if you want. And on the right side, I'm just going to loosely do these kind of choppy strokes. It's blending with that darker green. It's still wet, but it's enough to give it that little bit of highlight that gives you depth and dimension in your trees. We can do this to the trees over here. This one, the layer of green is dry by now, but I'm still able to add a layer of this lighter color on the right side, and plus they're further away, so they don't have to be as detailed as the ones in the front. Also, with that lighter color, I'm going to add just a little bit of lightness on the back part, so the furthest away part of these rows of grapevines. Adding a little bit of light color, a little bit of light color on the tops of some of this shrubbery. That's going to help create a little bit more depth when you have lighter colors in the distance. Then I'm going to rinse my brush and go back with my Dioxazine Purple. I'm going to do a layer of really, really dark on the base of these. So just like on the right side when we did the black on the base, I'm going to do this with the darker purple. Give it that shadow right there at the bottom. I don't want to cover up all of my ground color. I still want that showing through. So that dark color. And we can drag it up a little bit. Helps create a little bit more shadow in our lavender. Maybe there's a little bit of lavender way in the distance, but we need this to be super, super light. So this is white and purple. I'm just doing a few little kind of dabs of purple way back here. Of course, those trees are in the way, so we can't really go into much detail with that. Maybe there's a few way back here. Maybe between the house and the trees. Then I'm going to layer on some more green on the bottom of the lavender. So I have the green on my brush. I'm just going to dab this kind of over that darker layer we just did. Maybe a little bit under it. Give it that kind of green color on the base of these plants. This is a detail that you can skip, but I'm going to do lavender plants that are kind of up close on the lower right part of the painting. Adding a little bit of purple down here kind of helps balance that out a little bit since there's only purple on the left side. So I'm just going to take my round brush and the Dioxazine Purple, and I'm going to do these little kind of dots that are forming in these like columns. And it's a little tricky because it's kind of already dark down here and the purple's dark, so it's not really showing up that well, but we can add white to our brush to get that to stand out a little bit better. So adding titanium white to that purple helps brighten it up a little bit, but I'm just doing little dots, forming those little columns of lavender flowers sticking up in the lower right corner. Maybe there's a little bit of greenery or grass kind of sticking up. So I'm going to mix a lighter green with the green and the white. And again, adding that white in there will help this to stand out a little bit better. A little bit more purple in there. Again, this is very loose, abstract, impressionistic, not super realistic. I'm going to add lighter color on the top of these lavender fields back here, just on the very, very top. Help brighten that up just a little bit. Really, the rest of this painting is all touch-ups. All these extra touch-ups I'm doing are not things that you have to do, or maybe yours doesn't need this extra bit of white way back here on the field or on the road. I'm using the 12 bright brush and the titanium white very, very loosely, kind of a thin translucent layer. I just wanted that road to be a lot lighter way in the distance. That really helps to create depth in that road, and then it gets darker, more shadowy at the bottom. The last thing I want to do is do a very, very light green hill way back here where it's a little bit too flat back here. Again, completely optional. This is just something I wanted to add. It's a very, very light green color with the Hooker's Green Hue and the white. So this land kind of elevates up here and back here. So it helps with that transition of that mountain with the flat green area. It makes it look like there's more hills way in the distance, and just kind of like fades into the rest of that darker green. A very, very thin layer of light green paint to create those hills. And then I'll take one last chance at these little or big lavender pieces. Maybe they're grapes, maybe they're bunches of grapes just kind of hanging out down here. We don't really know. Adding a little bit of white down here, kind of brighten that up. And I'm gonna fill this lower right corner with a little bit more green down here. And that is it. This is the conclusion of how to paint Tuscan landscape. Hope you enjoyed this one. Thanks for watching, and thanks for painting with me.